technician in...
yeah, I know, but is he supposed to be here now? I've not spoken to him since the competition.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for arriving on time. I'm sure some other people will be joining us, but in the meantime, we'll kick off this first session of the day. I'll turn things over to Roland, who will introduce the panelists, and we'll get started. And remember, if you have comments or questions that you would like to raise, have them in mind, and then when the time is right, you'll come up here to the front and become part of it. Roland, over you go.
Well, thank you very much, Jay. Good morning, everybody. It has been a rough day yesterday. I think it's going to be a little bit better today, and I think the overall topics are just as challenging. I have to make a few announcements in matters of housekeeping, and the first announcement would be our live stream yesterday was working 100%. Not huge audiences, as a matter of fact, but then we are very much a niche market. Now today, as we try to hook everything back up, hey, you're not allowed to live stream anymore. Why? We were asking. Well, then we figured out. One of the clips that we showed yesterday did have copyright issues, and then they block you. So that's to our community out there that just shoots from the hip and thinks this is not going to happen. YouTube is controlling very much content. They have systems that monitor, and if you infringe on copyrights, step number one, you're getting shut down, and then getting back up is relatively difficult. In any case, we think we have sorted out again, and for the future, what do we learn? Copyright is an issue and should be addressed properly by governing bodies, by private operators, by everybody. And then, as yesterday, our meal plan, I'm assured that today's lunch will be warm. So we made a valiant effort yesterday, and I cannot repeat myself enough. That we were able to pull this off was really thanks to a bunch of very, very good people, friends, the mayor's secretary. I mean, nobody wants to work on a holiday. Yesterday was a holiday, and because it was a holiday on a Sunday, they repeated today, and the same thing again. I mean, we have a former tourist director helping us. We have the secretary of the mayor helping us. It's all kept in-house here. Times are these, more or less. Then this is an important announcement. We're making Summit. I mean, we're getting there slowly but surely. I think 6 more hours and we're done. And as I said yesterday, we really overextended ourselves in making this happen. I mean, we were never really reasonable people, but really, so what we did is we launched this crowdfunding initiative, and we would appreciate any type of contribution that you feel, hey, we can afford that, and it will help their cause a little bit to balance our budgets. And that much for the housekeeping remarks. Now, please, session number 7. Can we change, David? Session number 7, the Achilles heel. It's quite simply put about the only thing that keeps indoor skydiving from being a total success. That's the weak points. In my opinion, very, very important weak points. And these weak points revolve around costs. And we all know that costs are significant. And we have assembled here a very nice and competent panel. Unfortunately, our colleague Shorty Messege, Windor, who was supposed to be talking about green energy, he's not here yet. He could still make it. And Let's hope he does. Then, on my right, we have Jan from the Czech Republic, the maker of one of the biggest brands in indoor skydiving, the brain behind it. You're an engineer by trade. Tell us a little bit about that.
About what?
About your career. I mean, you're a flow engineer.
Yeah, well, I'm hydraulic engineer, so that's a bit similar to the wind flow, but actually all this special stuff in aerodynamics, it's really done by the professionals of aerodynamics in our team. So I am just looking from bit side and trying to understand it.
I'm sure you do. And what was really remarkable about Jan, he said, well, we're already working on our next project in case wind tunnel is not going to really prosper much more. And you know what his next project is? He is working on mini breweries.
Microbrewery technology, yeah,
Okay.
but I would say this is a separate
All
unit.
right.
It's more like fun, actually. It's not it can be combined very well. I think the community of people flying in the wind tunnel, they quite often enjoy the beer as well, but I mean, we are not mixing it yet.
All right, then we have Joel. Joel, you present yourself a little bit to our audience.
10 years in the industry. Been working in pretty much all areas. I started off very, very basic, operating tunnels, and then moved to managing, and then operating companies. And then I found a few other people with slightly different skill sets that have also been directors of wind tunnels, and we developed a consultation company. Since then, we've done various different projects, and we've been continuing that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have from France, nearby Bordeaux, we have Vince,
Yeah.
please.
So I've been working for more than 12 years in the sports innovation for Decathlon. And then I'm not coming from skydiving at the beginning, so I just discovered indoor skydiving in a team meeting. I just fell in love with it, so I decided to make a contribution for the problem of the price of the practice. So I tried to make something up.
Yep. Then we have Oskar.
Yes, short introduction. I'm from the Netherlands, and I don't consider myself in industry a bit similar to you. I'm a designer, aerodynamicist, consultant for wind tunnels, but I have experience in dozens of other fields as well, bicycles, cars, and such. And in the past, I worked a lot on automotive wind tunnels as well, so I have a lot of knowledge of complex and bigger tunnels than the skydive tunnels. And with Actiflow, I designed a tunnel that's built in Utrecht, the only double tunnel, and I worked on rebuilding several other tunnels, renovation projects.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being here. Let's make this really as thinking out the box as possible. Yeah. And I was hoping to get this started to show up here with a few figures, really substantiated figures. I had the opportunity in Switzerland through a good friend of mine to actually have power consumption of a wind tunnel analyzed on the basis of, they call it load sheets. That's familiar to all of you, like energy consumption over time. And that allows a specialist to make an analysis, and then afterwards, based on that analysis, make recommendations. There are certain systems in place that a lot of the grid operators are using to give consumers the option of trading in some of their flexibility for better prices. And unfortunately, the one wind tunnel that I had picked to provide these load sheets, they just never came around. And, in the end, we had to improvise this a little bit. Now, Paul Niggli is this friend of mine. He's basically the crisis manager of Swissgrid, and Swissgrid is huge, a small country. Swiss is a powerhouse in power because we're producing more than what we use. And now I brought this gentleman together with a an operator of a wind tunnel in winter tour, Tobias Oertle, and we had them do a conversation on, hey, what can we do to bring costs down? And we're just going to show you the start. It turned into a 1 hour conversation, and very productive, very topical, I think. But we don't have 1 hour. So we're just going to show you 1 minute now. You get the idea. And then I'm going to be addressing, probably, other than you, probably the audience as well, because I know that some of you guys are already doing things. And we'll take it from that angle. So here is this conversation of a tunnel operator and the crisis manager, CEO of Swissgrid. And that's how it happened. Can you play the video, please?
Mein Name ist Tobias Oertle, ich bin der Geschäftsführer vom Windwerk in Winterthur. Wir haben Ende 2018 eröffnet, also sind am 8. Dezember vorletztes Jahr in Betrieb gegangen und jetzt gut 1 Jahr in Betrieb.
Ja, mein Name ist Niggli. Ich bin der Krisenmanager von Swissgrid. Swissgrid ist der schweizerische Übertragungsnetzbetreiber, also die betreiben das ganze Hochspannungsnetz der Schweiz und verteilen so den Strom an alle Standorte.
Reguliert das ja auch ziemlich, oder?
Das ist reguliert, das ist übrigens seit 2009 ist das ein offener Markt, das heißt auch für Kunden, die eben größere Strommengen verbrauchen, heißt das, sie können den Strom frei einkaufen, bei Lieferanten, an der Börse, wo auch immer. Das ist für die großen Kunden jetzt die Möglichkeit, auch hier auf dem Markt etwas die Preise zu überschauen.
Da hätte ich eine Frage, weil...
All right, that was the beginning of a 1 hour conversation. I really think you will have to watch it. It's very interesting, the points that are being raised. Swissgrid, it's like NASA a little bit. You go there, you're impressed. And there are many ways that can be used to reduce your expense on power consumption. The most significant, and obviously that all depends a little bit which country we're talking, there is something called control energy. Control energy is basically a trade-off with your grid operator. You're saying, well, you can call on me to actually shut down my operation for a few minutes for the length that you stipulate. In return, I will then qualify for better rates. Can I address this to the tunnel operators here? Who is doing something like this already? Can you raise the hand? That's what I figured. From Germany, is Boris here? No. Okay, obviously it took me a while to read up on it, and then I talked to some of the operators. Jochen, Schweizer Arena, they have an energy consumption just for the tunnel portion of probably, well, in euros, probably about 400,000 euros. In their best year, it was savings of roughly 60,000. Not possible, you're saying? Not enough.
Spending a lot of money on power. Too much.
It's too much. No, but like then they saved 60 or 70,000 euros with this control energy. It's too much. We should have brought you guys up here. Simon, come on. I mean, no, please. I mean, honestly, I knew we had to basically address this to the operators. But can you, Jay, can you give Simon or Manu, whoever?
You want to talk about power?
Power. No, let's not get too technical, and don't threaten me. All right, go ahead.
So power it's only about the third or fourth most expensive thing. Cost of money is expensive to build a tunnel. Rent is expensive depending where you are. Labour, of course, is the most expensive. And then power normally comes in from the operators who are here, probably sort of third or fourth normally. So with the power, what we're finding, we have a whole energy department almost. We're buying power all over the world. And the most expensive place to buy it is Perth, Australia, and in California. So we've written software now for our operators, so which we now deployed in most of our tunnels. And that decides how much power we're using, because you pay for power normally on capacity. So you buy a certain amount of capacity, and then you buy the kilowatt hour. And then the kilowatt hour tends to be, depending which market you're in, about half of what you're going to end up paying per kilowatt hour. The rest is all on social taxes, on feed-in tariffs, on green energy taxes, putting back into the grid, distribution. Literally in a power bill in the UK, we get 20 different lines of costs. And we would average maybe in the UK, which is quite expensive, at about 11 pence per kilowatt unit. And that includes the capacity charges. So if we can reduce the capacity we require, so for instance, a 14-foot tunnel, we would take a capacity of maybe 800 kilowatts at any possible time. Could we maximize in a half hour? And that would be the same in Paris. So just so you know, Paris, 14-foot tunnel, we pay about 204,000 euros a year, and we do about 4,500 hours.
So that's half of what Jochen Schweitzer pays in Europe.
Yeah, so that's a pretty efficient tunnel. And we're now going into battery technology as well. So partly for the Chinese market, when you go into China, there's less power available from the grid. So you need to look at sort of topping out maybe at a megawatt, and then if you need more than that, then you would take it out of batteries. And we're doing the same in California, where we've got batteries in some of our tunnels already.
Which also, like I read up on that, you buy them from Tesla. It's a major investment, a battery like that.
Yeah, Tesla's the domestic side of it almost, and we're really working with technology providers out of Shenzhen.
What really amazed me, I mean, I'm not a power consumer like a wind tunnel, but yes, I have floor heating and things like that, and obviously it's different hours, different prices, but the dynamics of this energy market is such that is really, it's stunning. It's like a stock exchange, demand, and...
One of the most interesting things is what we call the triads, and they have different names in different places. But all the energy providers look at what you're going to use at the maximum time, which is normally when people come home from school and they put the kettle on in the winter countries, and then it's the biggest aircon time that you're going to use in the summer countries, in the hot countries, Australia, California. And if you can minimize your flying in that time, that will affect your rates for the whole year. So we typically know that that's going to be about 5 o'clock. And we know when the triad days are going to come, and we never fill those, we never book anything, and everybody can then take stuff at last minute. So we now have pro flyer deals that they can come in, but they know that at the drop of a hat, we're going to switch them off and they're not going to work. And so we just don't fly at that time, and then we can save about £60,000 a year on each of those tunnels.
Excellent. I mean, this is, we probably should have brought you in from the very beginning. But I mean, obviously, you're the biggest operator. You have this internationality that nobody else has. And you said the highest prices are Australia, the city of Perth. Where is it the cheapest in terms of kilowatt hour?
Probably the Middle East.
The Middle East?
Yeah, I think that's pretty cheap. And if it isn't, they don't care anyway. So, we're using 7,200 kilowatts potential at the 32-foot in Abu Dhabi. So I don't really think that's high on their agenda, what the power's going to cost them.
I have, is Paul Mayer here? Because in his operation, there is this, I think, fine print that from this hour to this hour, we have the right to kind of shut down. That's also because of that.
The same sort of thing.
In any case, I think what is to be learned for an operator, most of them already know it, is there are ways of keeping your eyes on the market, of negotiating deals, and there are some guys in this industry that I've met now personally. I mean, they're like bankers. They, whoa, take it, it's cheap. I'll give you that much for it. And this puts you in a good situation in your negotiations with the power company. Like Switzerland, it's outrageous. They have 900 different power companies, private power companies, and they all have different policies. So you can play one against the other and probably get better deals. And that's not everywhere like this, but these energy markets are opening up. You said before, obviously, it's only the fourth or the third factor in expenses. But also, there isn't much you can do in terms of labor, of the staff you employ. I mean, you cannot lower their rates or reduce their numbers significantly. But here, this is something you can do something about. No? Thank you very much, Simon. I think we can leave it at that. The whole interview, or it's not an interview, it was meant to be a conversation between two friends. They really did this well. If you can stick with just reading subtitles for, it's not 45 minutes, I would say. It's worth your while, because storage-wise, I mean, there are calculations you can make. When is storage really an option? I mean, right now in most parts in Switzerland, it's simply too expensive, the hardware. But they already anticipate a reduction in prices there, and then I know Winter Tour, they will probably by the end of this year buy their first storage unit. Okay, now what in terms of energy, in terms of other ways of bringing operational costs down, what would you think is an option that an operator has to improve on the status quo?
I think cost reduction can really be applied to pretty much any aspect of the company, even before you even set up. But if you're talking about the actual operations, there's really everything that you can look at. For me, there's a few key areas which you should focus on. You should focus on understanding where you are. Tunnels are international, and things work differently wherever you are. So, for an example, in one country, it may be a brilliant idea to outsource. You might want to outsource your staff, instructors, receptionists, cleaners, everyone. That may be the best thing you can do for that particular tunnel. In a different country, that may be the worst thing you can do. That may cause much higher costs. You may be much better off having all in-the-house staff. So one of the first things you should really look at is the place that you're at, the culture, the laws within that country, to see how things work best in that particular place. Even when you don't really know yourself, it's quite simple to look at how the companies, not tunnel companies, but the other well-run companies within that area are operating, because most things cross over. I think the other big point is simply looking at every expense that you do have, working out how you can get providers for energy or even Wi-Fi or all these other little things that you have to pay for, which companies can provide you the best service for the cheapest costs. And then everything else, heating. Heating can sometimes be a massive aspect within a company. Working out how to have the best technology to get the cheapest heating, how to maximize your heating. I mean, every tunnel normally has closed days. Do we need to be operating the heating during those days? Can we bring it up to the correct temperature without that? Many tunnels have vastly different opening hours and different amounts of customers. Is the tunnel maximizing their opening hours? If you have slightly less customers, is it worth condensing your days down? Do you close on more days and open for longer hours so you can have the same staff working slightly longer shifts and not create extra costs for that way? So then, like I said, looking at all different aspects and seeing where you can save the money is very, very important. Then I think the next biggest thing is then the people you have within the company, within the tunnel itself.
Staff.
Because it's great to have plans and processes in place to be able to save money within your company. But if you don't have the people who have the motivation to be able to pull off the plan that you've set in motion, then it's not going to be successful. So it's very important to find people that are on the same wavelength as the operators themselves a little bit, that can actually be driven enough to do the things which are going to help the company save money.
Thank you very much. One question in terms of staff. What would you consider average size for an average size tunnel? Number of hours of operation obviously being the decisive factor. How would you address that?
Again, it is down to the particular project and the technology in which you use, in fact. There's lots of technology out there now where you can actually minimize the staff required during the day, and sometimes that can be very beneficial. I mean, generally speaking, I'm pretty sure every operator knows the minimum kind of staff that you need for instructing. You need one person spotting, you need one person operating. The majority of the time. Sometimes there is a way to actually, for pro flies to be able to cut out the tunnel operator in certain circumstances. Then there's the first timers. You might need someone to be getting them ready, getting them kitted, and then obviously it's quite tiring work, so you might need someone to be taking a break. If you're fully booked, you can get away with 4 or 5 in the circulation. There isn't really much necessity to be going over that if you've planned things and the processes properly. With not so busy tunnels, you can get away with much less, depending on the circumstance.
Thank you very much. Now, Jan, you're an engineer. You're a brilliant mind and thinking in categories not many people think. You look at this and is it that sometimes at night you wake up and what could I do to make it more whatever efficient? And are these thoughts on your mind?
Well, that's actually the principle of what we are doing. We try to, of course, because the energy is the issue. I think this is the principle of all producers to do it as efficient as possible. But this wind tunnel business is working already for a few decades, and I think a lot of improvements was already done. And I have the feeling if there is not some really brilliant idea of flying, not because of propellers, but whatever other, that there is not much possibilities to do it even more expensive, even more saving energy. So even more expensive it is, but that belongs here. So yeah, I mean, we are still trying to play a little bit with tuning of ventilators. We are analyzing the flow conditions and flow consumption for different way of flying, and then we are trying to adjust maybe the blades on the ventilators for the optimum conditions. It also very much depends on the position where the wind tunnel is built, because building in Colombia, 2,400 meters above sea level, it's completely different story than doing it here in Empuria Brava. So there is quite a lot of other parameters and ideas which really play important role in optimizing the wind tunnel and its consumption. Of course, there is a big deal about the aerodynamics, but I think that there is really limited options now to do it better. there are some necessary elements which are along the circulation of the air, like the turning vanes, safety net, and others, which has to be there for just because of the principle and aerodynamics. And then we cannot fight very much with the physical loss, so there are some energy losses by the friction, by the turbulences, and we can just minimize them. But there is, this game nowadays, I think that we are speaking about a single percentage of saving of energy on optimizing of some small things. So what I think it's exactly about the optimization in operation, taking some, cheaper time of the flying. For example, in Denmark, there is already, I don't know if it is in more countries, there is kind of automatic change of the price of the electricity according what kind of sources are giving the energy. So once the windmill starts to make more energy, then immediately you are charged by a different rate than before. And these are, I think, the places where maybe the software of the tunnel can really come and give some advantage, maybe using the batteries, as you mentioned, and with the cheaper energy make some reserve. But the disadvantage is that it's difficult to predict, actually.
Right. Right. Oskar, your angle on it?
You call it the Achilles heel, but as we're transitioning into sustainable sources everywhere, wind, solar, water, at certain points there will be so much sustainable sources of electricity, especially solar, wind. Those are very erratic sources. It's either there or it's not, and when you have it, you always have too much. And what we basically do now, of course, there's the open market. You can buy the certificates, you can trade them, but still a very high percentage of energy is basically dumped. They need to get rid of the overpower in wind and in solar. And when you're dumping energy, why not dump it in a wind tunnel? So you can also turn it around and see a wind tunnel as a way, like Simon already said, pick your hours well, but you could also go one step further and negotiate a deal with the net companies to have a happy hour or so, and there's overproduction and there's free energy and people can fly for free or so, and make it so that it's very clear that you're using excess energy in certain hours of the day. And I think one of the main considerations is where you put your tunnel. So if you put your tunnel on a location where you're near the grid, near overproduction, near excessive energy, I think you can negotiate very decent deal on power, and then also don't consider in this case this as the Achilles heel. I think it's a very useful way of spending excess energy. So I don't see it as dark as the title suggests. I see a lot of opportunity. So and as sustainable energy keeps on growing, there will be more wind, there will be more sun, it will be more erratic, it will be. We're all discussing what to do with the energy. Should we store it? Battery storage is not a very good idea on large scale yet. We tried with water energy, you can pump it up and reuse it again. A very good idea. But excess needs to be turned somehow in at least something fun instead of dumping it in the ground. So I think this is one of the best ways of using excess energy.
So actually that's an uplifting message you're giving here, and it's too bad that Shorty isn't here, because Shorty at Windor, I think it was 2 years ago, he made a very deliberate effort to say, hey, we're going to go renewable energy, and they turned to a Spanish operator that only deals in renewable energy, and the consequence, I mean, it's slightly, at this point, slightly more expensive than normal energy. But then it was the ecological thing to do, and a little bit of image building. But as you said, I mean, this is happening, and then Spain is probably the country in terms of wind, in terms of sun, unbeatable in certain areas. Energy, green energy, is that a major issue for you?
For sure, but we look at green energy, and there's certainly a lot in Texas. But a lot of people will just switch you between anyway, automatically. There's, you asked what the big savings are. It's definitely manifest management, how you operate your business. It's definitely labor, and it's definitely how you use energy. So if you were to take half an hour of VFS flying non-stop, that could set your electricity rate for the entire year in terms of the capacity charges that you're charged. So therefore, if you can manage the way that you use every half hour, and the biggest users of your electricity are your instructors and your pro-flyers, so that's where you have to learn to manage it. And the other area, we talk about manifest management, is how you deal with that manifest every single day. We run things called skinny shifts, where you block off every half hour when you're not busy, because that way you can use half the labor. And it just means that you're using stuff very efficiently. You still need the people. I get worried when you say what you can get away with, because we never try to get away with anything, because that kind of gets into the point of compromising health and safety and things like that.
No, not like that. I'm talking like, let's imagine you've got a four-way team, and you can have the option so you can see a screen with warnings, and you have the option that you can be able to operate from the driver's booth. From the door where you operate. So that I'm saying you can get away with, you have everything in place necessary. So it's safe.
I was sure it was a turn of phrase, but that's a really important part to us. So energy is a killer, and there are new technology solutions to this. So we're literally just trialing something that we think will bring us a minimum of 4%. And that's massive on our energy bill for 90 tunnels around the world, if we can put that in. And it could be as much as 10. So, and it's, again, something in the airflow. So
it's keeping at it.
Well, I have one more thing, actually, which is also, it depends very much on the country and on the principle of paying and charging for the electricity. Somewhere you are paying for maximum per 15 minutes, somewhere it's, another period of the time. But what makes the wind tunnel expensive on the consumption is not really the flying itself, but those rapid changes where sometimes really you can reach the for a few seconds some maximum, which is maybe over your agreed limit, which makes the operation and expensive. And this is something what can be solved by the software which is inside of the wind tunnel. I think most of the producers have it. That you can, of course, it's there is a compromise between the speed of the reaction of the wind tunnel, but the consumption, and that might be really optimized according to the grid condition and local operators allowed amount of the energy he can or he is willing to do. So we can even, compromise of starting the cooling system later or not at this time when you are flying that high speed, starting not in 2 seconds but in 3 seconds or 4 seconds, which doesn't make sense much for the flyers, but you can pretend those consumption peaks. So that's something which really, I think, could have the influence on the total efficiency.
Yes?
For me, another very important thing to do is be very careful when you are trying to cut costs within the company and the operations. Sometimes something may seem like a very good idea because you're saving money quite instantly, but you have to look at how these impacts other areas of your company as well. At times you may do something which may drop the motivation of staff or upset customers. And at the end of the day, you need those customers to stay coming back. There's no point dropping costs if you end up getting lower sales. There's no point lowering motivation if people are going to leave and you have to then pay more to replace. You might as well keep your customers happy, keep your staff happy, and then work out how to lower the costs while still maintaining that level. So I think that's also very, very important to be able to accomplish.
Excellent. No, that's obviously also a principle in every business, and many ways. What's probably getting back to the initial plan that I had to really have this analysis of Swiss situation, wind tunnel consumption, really analyzed on the basis of that, maybe control energy applied the system, and maybe over a period of 3 or 4 months, really trying to find out what would have been achievable. And that this didn't happen, it's unfortunate, but yeah, I still have with my friend an offer. If somebody has in a market that he can relate to, because he's, as I said, he's working in Switzerland, he would offer himself to analyze on the basis of a grid operator, he knows certain other markets, and make certain recommendations. And if you listen to the conversation, you're going to catch up on a few things you mentioned on like storage aspects, and overall it's very, very positive. What I noticed here in Europe, there are significant differences in prices between certain locations and other locations. I mean, right now, where would you say in Europe flying is the cheapest?
Poland is very, very cheap. Not in Europe, but you can also go to Russia. Very, very cheap. And I don't really think it's wise to say within Europe, because most pro flyers, they don't care whether it's in Europe or not. As long as they can go there cheaply, they're going to go there.
I kept my focus a little bit on Europe. It's definitely, I confirmed that Poland is by far the least expensive, and Russia, obviously. They're also working a little bit more creatively, and then longer hours and new formats with people going there, basically living in a wind tunnel and sleeping there, eating there, and flying there at 4 o'clock in the morning if needed. Are you considering something like that?
We consider most things when we can. We haven't quite got around to the Slovakian package where they even take you up in bed at night, I think, but we haven't quite got around to that. But there's definitely, there's a race to the bottom, and that's always the danger, is the race to the bottom. And whether it's the sale of technology or whether it's the sale of tunnel time, when there's a race to the bottom, there's a compromise. And when there's a compromise, it ends up not being a good place. So for us, we'd rather premium our product, although I don't think we're at premium prices. Some of our tunnels will be, some won't, depends on the market. But we just don't want to go chasing a very small part of that business for the sake of it. We know that the skydiver trade, the pro flyer trade, will go chase the price. We totally understand that. And sometimes we're not going to do that because they're going to want the same peak times that we can sell out well by bringing in new flyers and hopefully creating the new flyer market as well. There's other ways we think to bring premium in, and that might be through a different coaching program or bringing in external coaches and doing other things. So we rarely chase the bottom price.
And that usually is the good policy. In many ways, I was amazed now, this tunnel that opened up, one of your tunnels in Abu Dhabi. Apparently, and I've seen videos already, that there is a tourism, people going there just to fly that tunnel. And Abu Dhabi, I've been there a number of times. It's not the closest location, it's not the cheapest location, and they go there to fly in this huge tunnel.
I was talking to Domi last night. We reckon it probably is the cheapest flying on the planet. There's a 35, you're going to put a 35 way in there. So they'll put 35 people in there, and I think it's about 12 or $1,500 an hour. It's nothing. It's for a 32-foot tunnel. It's nothing. That's going to be the cheapest flying on the planet. So get 32 mates and off you go.
No, but I think people, correct me if I'm wrong, people are doing that already.
I
saw videos of 30 people in that wind tunnel.
You give me one skydiver and profile who doesn't want to go and fly in Abu Dhabi.
Before we turn over to Vince now, my last question to you, Oskar. You're also one of these Renaissance. You're touching a little bit of everything: Formula One, cars, and you see other ways of in design and retrofitted, God knows what, and an additional Venturi somewhere here or there, and that could make this affordable?
So I have analyzed quite some tunnels, and there used to be a lot of bad tunnels, very high consumption, and I do think that most people that are here today are now on a level where it's just sitting at the right point. There's no magical savings anymore when you do proper usage of a loop or a double loop, or even I think you can build an open loop system with the same efficiency if you do it well. I don't think that there's much there. This is I think that the one thing that determines the usage is the diameter that you choose, and that's the sometimes the bigger is the better. If you consider that story. So I don't think there is another step to take in power usage.
Well, there is one step that can be taken rather easily, and I don't know how we ran it. You called me, I called you?
You called me.
I called you?
Yeah.
Okay. All of a sudden this, boom, I said, what is he doing? So we talked, and here is a gentleman who basically had an excellent job working for Decathlon in a think tank and being creative and probably getting pretty good pay. And he says, no, I just want to fly. And I've been there, and many, many years ago, you sacrifice your professional career. No, he said, I'm not sacrificing my professional career. I'm trying to build a new one. And his concept, very easily explained, is that of who knows what blah blah car is in this community. Okay, it's pretty much the blah blah car of wind tunnels, and you have better explain.
Yeah, I would say it's a blah blah car of tunnel time, because I'm not sharing the tunnel itself, I'm sharing the tunnel booking. So just to be back at when everything starts, when I start indoor skydiving, the price for this is the only sport in the world where we are talking the price for a minute. It's 12 euros a minute, so it's really expensive. I started flying, I fell in love with it, I started flying more. My wife came and told me, okay, this is a little bit expensive, so I just tried to told her, okay, I could have buy a motorcycle, so I continue flying. Then she came back and said, maybe now you can have 2 motorcycles. So I started thinking about it. And I was working in innovation and in social economy and collaborative economy. So the BlaBlaCar things just came together with the jams. I discovered that flying with other people in the wind tunnel is much more funny than flying alone, because when you're alone, you're flying for 2-3 minutes and then you don't know really what to do. So when you're together, it's really cool. But when you're starting to fly, you've been a first timer, you start to become a frequent flyer, basically you don't know anyone to fly with, and you have to find people to fly with. So this is where I decided what I need is to get a platform where I can find people to share my bookings with, and so I can save money. So I quit my job, I learned to code, and I developed it, and I try to run it now.
And I'm sure some of you have already met him, and you've approached now how many operators?
Not so much. I'm working mostly. I'm trying to go in Europe first. So I'm talking with some people in France, in Belgium, in Germany too, and it's going step by step because I'm alone on the project, so it takes time.
And you're taking 15 minutes this afternoon to really show it in great detail and in all color. And as he said, I mean, he did all his own coding, the website. You started your company on a one-man show. We have one thing in common there. And I really think, I mean, if the community accepts this, have you seen a Windiver concept described a little bit somewhere?
I have, yeah. Yep.
What's your initial reaction on it?
So one of the big things in operations for us is marketing, sales and marketing. So that's what it's all about. It's about filling the tunnels, filling the funnel, etc. So if that's another channel to marketing, bring it on. Fantastic.
This is CEO of iFly. Vince, go get him. All right. I think this was really productive, a lot more productive than it could have been. It's too bad that we don't have the window angle represented here, because that was basically the decision to go green. A little bit of social responsibility, a little bit of Greta effect. And it works. I mean, they got recognition for taking that step. Cost them a little bit more, but overall, I think it was the right decision. In any case, I mean, this is the one area that's where I'm in it over my head, because I'm a letters man. I mean, and barely kilowatts and kilo whatever. But now I'm amazed by the dynamics of the market. Because it is really something, if you study this right, even as a consumer, small consumer, you can probably save money, really. And on that note, I would like to thank everybody on this panel. I think you have made a great contribution here. I'm definitely glad I had you jump in here, because you touch it all. You're the ultimate Renaissance man. And we'll see each other again. Thank you very much, and thank you. Yep. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Now, if we do it
Hello, Roland. Hello. This is Jan Deniken from the Jochen Schweizer Arena. And I don't know what Jochen told you, but I think we do it also right with our energy consumption. We also have first-time flyers between 300 and 350 kilowatt per hour. So we love kids, we love belly flyers, and our consumption, yes, is like you said it, Simon, between 250,000 euros per year. So we got one recirculating wind tunnel, and we optimized it after bottom with a company, with a aerodynamic company who's working for automotive branch, and we made it a little bit better. So we are quite doing the same thing, and we also we got energy company who does with us atypische Netznutzung, called in Germany, atypic consumption. So we got this refund you talked about, up to 70,000 euros per year. But the 400,000 of Jochen is not right, because we got the arena with a surfing station, with a big gastronomy, with a wind tunnel, with 400 B2B events, so it's much more on the whole arena than 400,000, but the wind tunnel does round about 250,000 euros a year.
I'm sorry,
to make this correct.
Could have been my fault that I quoted, and it wasn't Jochen. It was I was talking very casually with Thomas Spielvogel, and the number 70,000 savings. I mean, that's what.
Well, I developed the wind tunnel, so I know how high the consumption is.
No, I really think this, maybe there is one operator here that hasn't heard about this. It's worth looking into. It is. And thank you very much. All right, thanks guys. Let's move on. Next is our session number... Session number 8.